everything that needed to happen for him to move up the depth chart has now happened. Guys in front of him have gotten hurt and been ineffective, and he's been steady. So he's made excellent progress. His excellent accuracy has been on display, and he's worked really hard at getting the pre-snap stuff down.
Picture this. It's Friday night under the bright lights of Charlotte. The crowd is buzzing. The cameras are rolling. And walking onto that field as the starting quarterback for the Cleveland Browns is the same player they buried at dead last on their depth chart just months ago. The same quarterback their own owner publicly distanced himself from. The same talent they tried to hide behind aging veterans and injury-prone backups. But tonight, Shedeur Sanders isn't just getting his shot. He's about to expose every lie, every excuse, and every political game the Browns have played. And once he lights up that scoreboard, there's no going back. This is the moment that changes everything. What you're about to witness isn't just another preseason game. This is justice served cold on a football field. For months, we've watched the Cleveland Browns treat Shedeur Sanders like a sideshow act, a marketing gimmick with famous DNA rather than the elite quarterback talent he's proven to be. They've made excuses, shuffled depth charts, and even brought in last-minute signings to avoid giving him a real chance. But injuries have a funny way of exposing the truth, and now with Joe Flacco sidelined, Kenny Pickett nursing hamstring issues, and Dillon Gabriel struggling with his own injuries, the Browns have run out of places to hide their best quarterback. In this video, I'm breaking down exactly how we got here, why this moment is so much bigger than football, and what happens next when Shedeur inevitably proves he should have been QB1 from day one. We'll expose the politics, the disrespect, and the desperation that led to this moment. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why Friday night in Charlotte isn't just a game, it's a revolution waiting to happen. Let's start with the most infuriating truth about this entire situation. The Cleveland Browns never intended for Shedeur Sanders to see meaningful playing time this season. This wasn't about development or earning your stripes. This was about politics, prejudice, and organizational cowardice disguised as football strategy. From the moment Shedeur was drafted, the writing was on the wall. While other fifth-round picks across the league were getting opportunities to compete, Shedeur was immediately relegated to QB4 status. Think about that for a second. A quarterback who completed 74% of his passes in college, who led Colorado to unprecedented success, who demonstrated poise under pressure that most NFL veterans would envy, and they buried him behind a 40-year-old Joe Flacco whose best days are a decade behind him. But here's where it gets really insulting. They didn't just put him fourth on the depth chart, they actively worked to keep him there. While Kenny Pickett, a quarterback who couldn't cut it in Pittsburgh and has been plagued by injuries since July, was getting first-team reps, Shedeur was running scout team duty. Picture this. The most accurate passer in the quarterback room is out there mimicking opposing quarterbacks while less talented players get the real coaching and development time. The disrespect reached its peak when owner Jimmy Haslam sat in front of reporters and publicly distanced himself from the Shedeur Sanders pick. This wasn't just poor leadership. It was a calculated message designed to diminish Shedeur's value before he ever took a meaningful snap. When your own owner won't stand behind you, what message does that send to coaches, teammates, and the entire organization? And let's talk about Dillon Gabriel for a moment. Here's a 5 feet 11 inches quarterback who dominated in college but has been getting exposed in NFL practices. Word from camp insiders is that he's been rattled by NFL-level pressure, struggling with the speed of the game, and now dealing with his own injury issues. Yet somehow, he was still listed ahead of Shedeur on the depth chart. This systematic burial of talent isn't just bad football, it's organizational malpractice. While other teams are developing young quarterbacks and giving them opportunities to grow, the Browns were playing politics with their most promising prospect. They were so concerned with protecting their veteran investments and avoiding controversy that they ignored the obvious talent sitting right in front of them. But here's the beautiful irony. All their scheming, all their depth chart manipulation, all their attempts to keep Shedeur in the shadows have led to this moment. Injuries have forced their hand, and now the quarterback they tried to hide is the only one left standing. And when he takes that field on Friday night, every excuse they've made, every justification they've offered, every political game they've played will be exposed for what it really is: fear of admitting they were wrong about their most talented quarterback from day one. Now let's dive into the most laughable aspect of this entire situation: the Cleveland Browns depth chart. If you looked at it on paper, you'd think Shedeur Sanders was the least talented quarterback in the room. But if you actually watch these players perform, if you analyze their accuracy, decision-making, and football IQ, you'd realize the Browns have been running the most backwards quarterback evaluation in NFL history. Let's start at the top with Joe Flacco. Yes, he has a Super Bowl ring. Yes, he's been in the league for over a decade. But let's be brutally honest about what Joe Flacco brings to the table in 2024. He's 40 years old, moves like he's wearing concrete boots, and his arm strength has been declining for years. The Browns putting him at the top of the depth chart isn't based on current ability, it's based on nostalgia and the false comfort of veteran experience. When your starting quarterback is closer to retirement than his prime, you're not building for the future, you're desperately clinging to the past. Then we have Kenny Pickett, and this is where the depth chart becomes truly absurd. Pickett couldn't establish himself as a franchise quarterback in Pittsburgh, a team that was desperate for quarterback stability. He's been plagued by injuries, inconsistent decision-making, and a complete inability to elevate his game when it matters most. The fact that he hasn't practiced since July 26 due to hamstring issues should tell you everything about his durability. Yet somehow, this injury-prone quarterback who failed in his previous opportunity was listed ahead of Shedeur Sanders. Dillon Gabriel represents everything wrong with college to NFL evaluation. Yes, he put up impressive numbers in college, but the NFL is a completely different beast. The hits are harder, the windows are tighter, and the defenses are exponentially more complex. Reports from camp indicate that Gabriel has been struggling with the speed of the NFL game, getting rattled under pressure, and now he's dealing with his own injury concerns. He's a classic case of college success not translating to NFL readiness. Meanwhile, what has Shedeur Sanders been doing while these superior quarterbacks have been struggling and getting injured? He's been quietly dominating every opportunity he's been given. His accuracy in practice has been remarkable. His decision-making has been crisp and decisive. His leadership qualities have been evident even with limited reps. Camp insiders have consistently reported that when Shedeur gets his chances, he looks like the most polished quarterback in the room. The most telling aspect of this depth chart disaster is what it reveals about the Browns' evaluation process. They've prioritized age over ability, injury history over health, and politics over performance. They've created a system where the most talented quarterback gets the fewest opportunities, while less capable players get chance after chance to prove they're not the answer. But here's the thing about talent: it eventually finds a way to surface. You can bury it, ignore it, and make excuses for why it doesn't fit your plans, but when injuries force your hand and politics can't protect your favorites anymore, the truth becomes undeniable. And that truth is walking onto the field Friday night in Charlotte. Let's address the elephant in the room that perfectly encapsulates everything wrong with how the Cleveland Browns have handled Shedeur Sanders, Jimmy Haslam's public disavowal of the draft pick. When the owner of an NFL franchise sits in front of reporters and essentially throws his own draft pick under the bus before that player has even had a chance to prove himself, you're not just witnessing poor leadership, you're seeing organizational dysfunction at its most toxic level. Haslam's comments weren't just careless, they were calculated and revealing. When he distanced himself from the Shedeur Sanders pick, claiming he didn't push for it, he was sending a clear message throughout the organization: this player doesn't have my backing. In the NFL, where confidence and organizational support can make or break a young player's development, this was tantamount to sabotage. But let's dig deeper into what those comments really represented. This wasn't just about football evaluation or draft strategy. This was about cultural discomfort, about an organization that wasn't ready to fully embrace what Shedeur Sanders represents. Here's a young, confident, talented black quarterback with a famous father who doesn't apologize for his swagger or his success. For an organization that has historically struggled with bold personalities and cultural change, Shedeur represented everything they weren't prepared to handle. The timing of Haslam's comments was particularly damaging. Instead of publicly supporting his draft pick and creating an environment where Shedeur could thrive, he immediately created doubt and distance. This sent ripple effects throughout the coaching staff, the front office, and even the locker room. When your own owner won't stand behind you, how can you expect coaches to give you meaningful opportunities or teammates to fully buy into your leadership? What makes this even more infuriating is the contrast with how other organizations handle their young quarterbacks. Look at how teams like Houston embraced C.J. Stroud or how Washington supported Jaden Daniels. These organizations understood that developing a young quarterback requires organizational alignment and unwavering support. The Browns did the exact opposite, creating an environment of doubt and political maneuvering that was designed to limit Shedeur's opportunities rather than maximize them. The Haslam situation also reveals the deeper issues within the Browns organization. This is a franchise that has cycled through quarterbacks like they're disposable, that has consistently made decisions based on short-term thinking rather than long-term development. When you have an owner who publicly distances himself from his own draft picks, you have an organization that lacks the conviction and stability necessary to develop young talent. But here's the beautiful irony of this entire situation. Haslam's attempt to distance himself from Shedeur Sanders is about to backfire spectacularly. When Shedeur takes the field on Friday night and inevitably showcases the talent that made him a coveted prospect, those comments are going to age like milk in the sun. The owner who didn't want to be associated with this pick is going to have to watch as his unwanted quarterback potentially becomes the face of the franchise. This Friday night isn't just about Shedeur proving his football ability. It's about proving that talent transcends politics, that excellence can't be buried by organizational dysfunction, and that sometimes the players an organization tries to hide become the ones who save them from themselves. Just when you thought the Cleveland Browns couldn't make their desperation any more obvious, they pulled off one of the most transparent damage control moves in recent NFL history, the Tyler Huntley signing. Let's be crystal clear about what this move really represents. It wasn't about adding depth or veteran leadership. This was pure panic, a last-ditch effort to avoid giving Shedeur Sanders the full showcase he deserves, and the Browns know he's capable of delivering. Think about the timing of this signing. For months, the Browns were content with their quarterback room. They had their aging veteran in Flacco, their injury-prone former first-rounder in Pickett, and their undersized college star in Gabriel. Shedeur was buried at fourth, exactly where they wanted him. But then reality hit, injuries started piling up, and suddenly their carefully constructed depth chart was crumbling. With Flacco sidelined, Pickett nursing hamstring issues, and Gabriel dealing with his own physical problems, the unthinkable was about to happen. Shedeur Sanders was going to get significant playing time. That's when the Browns panicked and reached for Tyler Huntley. Now, don't get me wrong, Huntley is a solid NFL quarterback. He's proven he can manage games, he understands NFL systems, and he's been a reliable backup in Baltimore. But let's not pretend this signing was about football merit. This was about creating a buffer, a safety valve that would allow the Browns to split reps and minimize Shedeur's opportunity to completely take over the narrative. The Browns' fear is palpable and understandable. They know what happens when a talented young quarterback gets a real opportunity to showcase his abilities on a big stage. They've seen how quickly narratives can shift in the NFL, how one impressive performance can completely change the conversation around a player. If Shedeur Sanders gets a full half of playing time against the Panthers and lights up the scoreboard, the questions become unavoidable. Why wasn't this guy getting first-team reps? Why was he buried behind inferior players? Why did the organization try so hard to hide their most talented quarterback? The Huntley signing is essentially an admission of guilt. It's the Browns acknowledging that they know Shedeur is capable of something special, and they're terrified of what happens when the rest of the world sees it too. By bringing in Huntley to split reps, they're trying to water down Shedeur's opportunity, to create just enough uncertainty that they can continue their narrative of developing the rookie slowly. But here's what the Browns don't understand. Talent doesn't need a full game to announce itself. Shedeur Sanders doesn't need 4 quarters to prove he's been the best quarterback in that room all along. He just needs a few drives, a few opportunities to show his accuracy, his poise, his command of the offense. And once that happens, no amount of Tyler Huntley insurance policies can put that genie back in the bottle. The most insulting aspect of this entire situation is how transparent it is. The Browns are essentially admitting they've been wrong about their quarterback evaluation while simultaneously trying to prevent that truth from being fully exposed. They're playing politics with their most promising prospect while pretending it's about football development. But Friday night is coming, and no amount of damage control can change what's about to happen when Shedeur Sanders finally gets his moment to shine. This Friday night in Charlotte represents something much bigger than a preseason football game. This is a moment of reckoning, a cultural shift, and potentially the beginning of a revolution that extends far beyond the Cleveland Browns organization. When Shedeur Sanders takes that field as the starting quarterback, he's not just playing for statistics or individual recognition. He's playing for every talented player who's been overlooked, every young athlete who's been buried by politics, and every person who's been told they need to wait their turn despite being the most qualified person in the room. Let's talk about what happens when undeniable talent finally gets its moment. In the NFL, performance speaks louder than politics, and once a player delivers on the big stage, organizational narratives crumble instantly. If Shedeur Sanders walks into Bank of America Stadium and delivers the kind of performance we've seen glimpses of in practice, the accuracy, the poise, the leadership, the Browns won't just have a quarterback controversy on their hands. They'll have a full-scale organizational crisis that exposes every poor decision they've made in their quarterback room. The ripple effects of a strong Shedeur performance extend far beyond Cleveland. This becomes a story about talent evaluation, about giving young players opportunities, about the courage to admit when your initial assessments were wrong. Other organizations will be watching, taking notes, and asking themselves if they have their own Shedeur Sanders buried somewhere on their depth chart. This becomes a case study in how not to handle elite young talent. But the revolution isn't just about football, it's about representation and breaking barriers. Shedeur Sanders represents a new generation of black quarterbacks who refuse to be diminished or hidden. He's confident, articulate, talented, and unafraid to embrace the spotlight. When players like him succeed despite organizational resistance, it opens doors for others who might face similar challenges. It sends a message that talent will find a way to surface, regardless of the obstacles placed in its path. The social media explosion that will follow a strong Shedeur performance is predictable and powerful. Fans who have been frustrated with the Browns' quarterback decisions will have their vindication. Media members who question the depth chart will have their proof. Former players and analysts who saw Shedeur's potential will be proven right. The narrative will shift so quickly and dramatically that the Browns won't be able to control it or spin it. Here's what the Browns are really afraid of. Once Shedeur proves he should have been the starter all along, every decision they made looks foolish in hindsight. Every rep they gave to inferior players becomes a wasted opportunity. Every excuse they made about development and earning their turn becomes exposed as organizational politics disguised as football wisdom. The most beautiful aspect of this impending revolution is its inevitability. You can't hide elite talent forever. You can't bury natural leadership indefinitely. You can't suppress accuracy, poise, and football intelligence with depth chart manipulation and political maneuvering. Eventually, circumstances force the truth to surface, and when it does, there's no going back. Friday night in Charlotte isn't just Shedeur Sanders' moment. It's a moment for everyone who believes in meritocracy over politics, talent over tenure, and potential over prejudice. When he takes that field, he's carrying the hopes of every player who's been told to wait, every talent that's been overlooked, and every person who's been underestimated because they didn't fit the traditional mold. So here we are, on the eve of what could be the most significant preseason game in recent memory. Shedeur Sanders, the quarterback the Cleveland Browns tried to bury, the player their owner publicly distanced himself from, the talent they've systematically ignored and undervalued, is finally getting his moment under the lights. This isn't just about football anymore. This is about justice. This is about talent refusing to be silenced. This is about a young man who's been preparing for this moment his entire life, who's been groomed not just by his Hall of Fame father but by every slight, every doubt, every person who told him he wasn't ready. When Shedeur takes that field on Friday night, he's not just representing himself or even the Cleveland Browns. He's representing everyone who's been overlooked, everyone who's been told to wait their turn despite being the most qualified person in the room, everyone who's had to fight for opportunities that should have been freely given based on merit alone. The Browns may have written him off, but Friday night, Shedeur Sanders picks up the pen and writes his own story. And once that story is written in touchdowns, completions, and commanding performances, there's no erasing it. There's no going back to the old depth chart. There's no pretending the politics made sense. This is the moment everything changes. This is where the revolution begins. And it all starts Friday night in Charlotte when the quarterback they tried to hide finally gets to show the world what they've been missing. What do you think happens after Shedeur's performance on Friday? Will the Browns finally admit they were wrong about their quarterback evaluation, or will they find new ways to justify keeping him buried? Drop your predictions in the comments below. I want to hear if you think this is finally Shedeur's breakout moment or if the Browns will find another way to mismanage their most talented quarterback. And if you're as fired up about this story as I am, make sure you're subscribed because we'll be breaking down every throw, every drive, and every moment of Shedeur's performance. This is just the beginning of what could be the most dramatic quarterback story of the season. Hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss our post-game analysis when Shedeur Sanders potentially turns the entire NFL quarterback landscape upside down. The revolution starts Friday night, and we'll be here to cover every moment of it. Thanks for watching NFL Report. The wait is almost over, and history is about to be made. I'll see you in the next video with complete coverage of what promises to be an unforgettable night in Charlotte. Until then, keep believing in talent over politics, and never forget, the best players always find a way to rise to the top.